Okay, we are live. Lorraine, hello.
Good evening.
I'm Melissa Minnick, and I am here with Lorraine Hightower, who has been an educational advocate for the last 10 years plus, right, Lorraine?
Yes,
Yes, it's been a while.
yes. But it's nice to see everyone. Thank you guys. Whoever can join us, we're so happy you're here.
Yeah, and I'm sure people are just trickling in right now. And, but while we wait for people to join us and ask their questions, we'll still keep a conversation going. But we are here. Lorraine is here tonight to answer your questions about dyslexia, about advocacy. And we're just really excited. Hi, Elizabeth. Glad you're here. We're really excited to talk to you.
I was going to say, Melissa, I want to just say that I really felt called to jump on Facebook tonight. I was saying that to you and the rest of our team because of the last couple of weeks of what I'm seeing in my meetings with parents and with school teams. And again, I always like to give the disclaimer that we are not here to say that school teams are doing anything inappropriate. Many are very well intentioned, but a lot of school teams don't know what they don't know. And we're fortunate to have the chance to train some teachers. So tonight's presentation is really for parents because what I'm seeing is creating huge obstacles for parents and their kids. So I just kind of wanted to give that disclaimer that we are very pro-teacher, pro-public school. We have trainings available to help preventatively improve the process. But tonight's presentation is really for parent questions on what's going on.
Yeah. So if you're out there and you have a question about dyslexia advocacy, go ahead and throw it in to make a comment, and I will go ahead and read it to Lorraine throughout the night. But like Lorraine said, she has been called to come out here and talk to you guys today because she's seeing some things, boots on the ground in the schools, and she wants to talk to you guys about it so that way you feel more empowered and you understand the information that is given to you and how to use it in IEP meetings. Exactly. And Lorraine, it's mid-year right now. IEP progress reports are coming out. Can you talk to us a little bit about IEP progress reports, what they mean, and what the implications are, and what parents should look for in an IEP progress report?
Absolutely.
There's a lot to cover.
It is. That's such an important point because, as you said, many school districts are mid-year. So that means that children should be making more than, minor progress towards their IEP goals. So I want to just kind of ground the conversation, Melissa, in the fact that IEP teams are supposed to be crafting IEP goals to address the needs of a child that they believe are attainable in that year, calendar school year, or the year of the IEP. So when you're getting an IEP progress report, and parents should receive that at the same rate that schools are reporting on regular progress, like report cards, it's typically 4 times a year. Parents should be able to clearly see, is my child on track towards their IEP goals? And what we've been talking a lot about is how many school districts that we work in, they used to have like a numerical scale, like 1 through 5. And it would be really clear if you were like a 1, you were just at the beginning of this. If you were at a 4, the child was close to mastering their IEP goal. But what's kind of happening is a vague generalization of descriptive progress language where it will say, emerging skill, sufficient progress, and then mastered. And the trend that concerns me for parents who may not know, what does this mean? Is this sufficient progress? It's on just about every single goal that I see nowadays.
Right.
So yeah, I mean, this too.
What does that mean, right?
Yeah, because sufficient is all somewhat relative. And what I want parents to hear us say is it's okay to ask, who evaluated my child's performance and all available data that speaks to their, needs and what they're supposed to be working on and where they are right now, and determine that it's sufficient. And can you show me that data? Like, what is the key or the measurable scale that we're using to say that it's more than halfway towards meeting that goal, because we're more than halfway through that school year. Yeah. So I think that is like my biggest concern is this, vague language. And even in many of our school meetings, parents are starting to say, rightly so, do you think my child will master this goal by the end of the school year for those kids who have IEPs that end like in June and July. And school teams are starting to say, well, we're not sure, they're making sufficient progress. We'll let you know. And to me, that's really problematic, because if an IEP team, using all of the present level data, evaluations, informal assessments, all the information that they had, wrote these goals with the understanding that this child could achieve that goal in the course of that IEP, then it is very problematic that it's maybe not going to happen.
Yeah. And Lorraine, can you talk a little bit about how goals can be worded to make progress monitoring a little bit easier for parents to follow, making sure that they're SMART goals?
Yeah. We use that acronym. It's kind of, well-known, specific, measurable, attainable, realistic, time-bound. And then I always add, and I know you do too, Melissa, tailored to the child, right? That we're advocating for.
Got to be individualized.
Yeah, it does. And so it sounds simple. It sounds kind of cliche to say that acronym, but we will see goals that will say Jane Doe will read a passage at 133 words per minute on 4 out of 5 opportunities. Let me just say that. I'm making this up, so you might have to prompt me to speak to it, but it doesn't tell us, is that a grade level passage or any old passage, right? It doesn't say the accuracy. For kids who have dyslexia, they need to be reading at a rate of 95% accuracy. And then it's also doesn't have, again, this is just a fluency goal, but for many of our kids, we might also want to see a mirroring comprehension goal. Let's just say they're reading at that rate on grade level with accuracy. Then if comprehension has been a concern, are they eye reading? Are they ear reading? Were they able to answer explicit or implicit questions? Maybe that's another goal in their IEP. And so many of the times, we just actually worked on a case recently where one of the team's goals said they are going to achieve over 40% on their measures of academic performance reading assessment. But that doesn't tell us anything about their decoding, their comprehension, their word analysis. Like, did they use morphology to help them figure out those passages? It's just so vague, and it could be so much better. I guess.
And I think it's really helpful for parents to know that if we have an accuracy percentage that they have to make, right? And then we also have a number of trials or opportunities, then that gives us an opportunity to ask the team to tell us, how many times did my child meet that accuracy on the 4 out of 5 trials or on the 5 trials? And then you can ask for specific data to really make sure that you understand. And that should be in the progress report along with that sufficient progress code that they use.
You are reminding me of a conversation that I just had last week with a very well-intentioned administrator. I really respect this individual. Yeah. And however, the conversation kind of went down the road of, well, rate is not the most important factor. And I would agree. Rate, we're not trying to make dyslexic kids into speed readers. We would certainly agree with that statement. But rate does speak to automaticity. So what this administrator was proposing was, let's just take the rate out and let's work on grade level passages with accuracy. But why parents wouldn't want to agree to a goal like that is because it does remove their functional automatic ability to do that. And if they're like in a timed setting, for example, if this is an older student who has to pass a test, we need to know if they can't do it. It's not okay to just be like, well, we don't want you to become a speed reader, which I respect. But if the grade level criteria or the PSAT or the SAT or the honors assessment requires you to get this done in a certain amount of time and you can't do it, that then creates a barrier to you being able to show what you can do. You know what I mean? So again, this is a really well-intentioned administrator who said, look, this poor kid, I can see they're just filled with anxiety when they know they're going to be timed. And so I want to take that pressure off of them. And so wouldn't it be better? I'm not sure they use that word, but they were implying, wouldn't it be better to just take that pressure off? And so, we started having a conversation about why that's not necessarily a good idea at this stage.
Yeah. We have a question from a parent, but I have a feeling we're going to have to ask for some follow-up questions. So Elizabeth, if you could stand by. Here's the question. How much relevancy does seminar have with homeschool kids following our own customized curriculum. Also looking for help with dyscalculia.
Okay. I do need more information on this. I'm not sure I understand exactly. I will say right out of the gate, advocating for homeschool children can be challenging because school districts do, by and large, the majority, question the validity of the instruction. So I do appreciate, obviously, parents' right and decision to homeschool for a variety of reasons, but I just see that as an unknown challenge when you are advocating against a public school district. So can this parent break this down into very specific questions that I'd be happy to try to answer?
Yeah. So Elizabeth, if you could give us a little bit more information, we'll be happy to answer. And, she also mentions dyscalculia as well. Do you want to talk a little bit about dyscalculia, what it is, and what kind of support you look for students you represent?
Yeah, absolutely. So dyscalculia obviously is a specific learning disability that is impacting math. It can be impacting math calculations, applied problem solving, math reasoning, anything really to do with, like, oftentimes, I just wanted to say, for kids with dyslexia, I feel like I need to get this in. Word problems can be an issue, but that's not truly dyscalculia. That's dyslexia impacting math. So we're really talking about, like, applied problem solving and calculation. And a couple of things I want to say about this, Melissa. Accommodations are key, right? We know that kids who have dyscalculia, if they're impacted in calculations, they often need a calculator. They need to, perhaps have that burden taken off of them. If they're having challenge with applied problem solving, we need to do the appropriate assessments to figure out where that breakdown is happening so they can receive specially designed instruction, which is often using a multisensory approach with kids who have the specific learning disability of dyscalculia. So I'm going to give a shout out to Adrienne Meldrum's team at Made for Math. I just did a podcast with them recently, and I love how their therapists do use a comprehensive multi-sensory, which is visual, kinesthetic, and auditory way of reteaching math, so that it's really, going into all of the neuro pathways for the child who maybe missed some foundational gaps in their math knowledge and understanding. And
I love that you're bringing up the how. I love that you're bringing up the how, because that is what Elizabeth followed up with. Is she's looking for guidance on how best to teach her son, who's an early reader. And what you're talking about with dyscalculia very much ties in with dyslexia as well. So very similar responses. Yeah.
Yeah. And I think is this parent Elizabeth? Is that what you said her name was? Yes. Okay. Thanks, Elizabeth, for joining us. And yes, if you have a very early reader and you suspect dyslexia, and now it sounds like you might know that your child has dyscalculia, I mean, these specific learning disabilities live under the same umbrella, right? And multisensory instruction and reinforcement is going to be the most impactful way to help your son, not just with his literacy, but with the math. So Adrienne and I, in the past, have talked about, how they will use manipulatives. And I just have to share this, Melissa, because this happened in a meeting not too long ago. Not pieces of paper with squares that are cut out on flat paper and called manipulatives.
That's not quite the same.
No, that is not a manipulative. But, beads on strings and abacuses that can be touched and moved and manipulated to figure out, addition, subtraction, multiplication. I mean, I remember when my son was really little, we would do exercises with 5 piles of 5, raisins or something like that. And he would count 5 of 5 equals 25. And, if he could eat the raisins too, that made it memorable, but
definitely.
For Elizabeth on the homeschooling, I'm not sure we addressed her homeschooling question.
Yeah, I don't see any more follow-up on that. Okay. Rachel did add the Made for Math link. So thank you, Rachel, who is a member of our team. Thanks so much for being here with us, Rachel, and supporting.
That's great. If you are a parent who has a child who learns differently and requires multisensory instruction, their therapist, I'm going to call them, tutors are great. So that's great.
Yeah. So, Rachel, Lorraine, I'd like to go back to what we were talking about earlier
Sure.
with the progress reports. So, if you're a parent and you're not seeing the sufficient progress that maybe the
Yes.
team is reporting, or your child isn't even making the sufficient progress, what do you do? What's your next step?
Well, as I said, you can 100%, I think you should set up a time to, most school teams will not necessarily share the data electronically, but go in, meet with the case manager or the special education teacher and look at the compelling data that speaks to sufficient progress. And if you don't believe that there is enough data to show sufficient progress, then as parents, it's important to know you can ask for more skill assessment data. This is not asking for a comprehensive psychoeducational evaluation, although we can talk about that in a minute if you want. This is really, let's just say your child has a fluency goal, a decoding goal, a phonemic awareness goal, or something along those lines. You can ask for certain assessments like a phonological awareness screening test to see how is your child doing with phonemic awareness. Are they automatic? Are they able to demonstrate that skill within 2 seconds? If it's their goal was for decoding, and there should be the syllable types listed in the goal that the child is working on, and the team says sufficient progress, maybe parents have never seen a core phonics survey or an advanced core phonics survey. Both of those assessments are really important when you're wanting to see mastery of decoding and decoding with multisyllabic words. For spelling, we use all the time with our families. We ask for developmental spelling assessments, a DSA or qualitative spelling inventory, so we can see, okay, if they started here at the letter name stage at the beginning of the year, and are they truly now within Word? Where's the data to back that up? And I'm just quoting spelling stages from both the QSI and the DSA. They align together on a child's progression through a certain set of skills. And when we're talking about kids who have dyslexia, we always refer to like scope and sequence. That's something we talk about all the time. Another, watch out for parents, Melissa, is a lot of times teams can't talk about the scope and sequence that they're using to help remediate these skills. And that would be a big red flag.
Yeah. Yeah. And, there's so many acronyms and names of tests that are being thrown around. And I think sometimes that can be overwhelming for parents, because I think that happens in the IEP room. And so I think it's important to make sure that parents understand that if a child is struggling in a certain area, they can Google to find out what are the skill tests for this area: decoding, phonological awareness, fluency, whatever it is, those ones that you were mentioning, spelling. So, if this is recorded, you can go back, you can grab the names that Lorraine mentioned, and you can also Google to find out and talk to your team. Right.
Yeah. And they can talk to us. I mean, we're accessible on our website. You can reach out, send us a message on Facebook, what have you. So yes, I love that, Melissa, though. You always have to kind of let me know when I'm getting a little acronym happy, right?
I've been there myself when it's new, and it can be a little overwhelming. And so just to help them find what they need.
And I think the key takeaway is, sure, it's okay to say to this. I think parents are hesitant to challenge some of these progress scores or these numbers. And that's what I think we're really trying to convey is if you're told sufficient progress, but deep down you are not seeing it. You're not seeing these skills become more generalized. Let's just say spelling, for example. Your child's been working on it maybe for a couple of years, but you're still seeing the same errors when they're trying to write at home or in birthday cards or in their journals or their diary or what have you. You have a right to ask for that data to show you where is the evidence of the progress that's being made. And it really shouldn't be that hard to produce.
Yeah.
Because there's running records and things like that in addition to these assessments that we're mentioning.
Yep, absolutely.
Yeah.
I think that's always the hardest, isn't it? Like to just, this came up in a conversation with a parent recently too, where they're like, but that my kid's teacher's my friend, and I want to stay friendly. I want to be close with them. And it becomes, difficult. They feel like they're, pushing back and that they're not going to be friends anymore.
Yeah. But
Yeah.
you know what I will say to that, because I have the chance to work with a lot of great teachers, actually, and there's a lot of mutual respect on teams after we've worked together for a while. And a teacher who, how do I want to say this, who is appropriately collecting data for a child will be happy to show you the progress that the child is making. So again, this is not personal to a well-intentioned teacher that maybe could use some coaching or mentoring on how to collect data and report data maybe more effectively. But teachers who are doing that, they don't mind parents asking, hey, can you show me these assessments? They're happy to show it and be like, yeah, and I think they're going to master it by the end of the year, or here's why we don't believe they're going to. And so it really should be a little bit of a red flag if your teacher can't speak to that. Which makes me think of one more thing. I don't know if we have any live questions, but I just thought of another thing.
Go ahead.
This is another common trend that in the last month has been really troubling me, because we work with so many families and we're privileged to help write their IEP. And so a lot of these kids are actually meeting these goals, and that's something to celebrate. But that, growth doesn't mean there's no disability still, right? So what is concerning is that in many of these cases, the child may have had 6 goals. The school team is coming back and proposing 2 goals. And yet we have IEP progress reports that don't really show mastery of the goals they're proposing to remove. They still say sufficient progress. Mm-hmm. And when we have a collaborative discussion around this, the school teams are saying, well, they're making so much progress. Mm-hmm. We don't believe they still need those goals. But again, another red flag for parents is, if the goal's not mastered, it should stay in the IEP until it is. Goals shouldn't just fall off because a child's making progress, because in the case that I'm quoting, that child is doing amazing on their comprehension part with the read aloud. They're doing the MAP reading assessment with a read aloud, and they're landing in the 90-some percentile. They're decoding all the syllable types, but they're still struggling with nonsense words, which it tells you they're not yet automatic, right? Mm-hmm. And so and their spelling is coming along, but it's still not mastered where it should be for their grade level. It's still developmentally behind. So on the one hand, the parents and I are celebrating all this growth. And yes, thank you to the school team for everything that you're doing, to help make that happen. But it's too soon to take our foot off the gas, as I like to say, and pull those goals out until we see mastered on that IEP progress report.
Yeah, absolutely. And then we can build on goals too. They don't always have to be removed. It can be, what's the next level of learning?
You're right, Melissa.
As I think about that case, Lorraine, I'm thinking about how they also proposed removing the read aloud accommodation. Yes, do you want to talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, I mean, again, it's an interesting discussion, because here is a child who, couldn't access the grade level curriculum and show what she knew without the read aloud. Now she's accessing that and landing in the 90-some percentile. And the school team is saying she doesn't need the read aloud. And the parents and I are saying, but that is the accommodation that allowed her to show what she knew, because it removed the barrier of not being able to read multisyllabic, unfamiliar words fluently. And when you think about what is a nonsense word, it's really any word that you don't know what it means, right? It's a nonsense word to you. So this kid hasn't mastered all of the multisyllabic words that you would need to master on an advanced decoding survey. And she very much still needs that read aloud accommodation. So what I proposed in that situation, and I think the parents are open to it, is bring us the data. Let's trial this a little bit with this child. Go ahead and ask her to do some eye reading with grade level text, and let's see how she performs. Is she still in the 90-some percentile, showing that she can eye read and comprehend? And if not, if she can, great. Then you have a better point to the parents on letting that accommodation go, right? But if she can't, and I still think right now at this point in the school year, she can't, we need to keep it. And ultimately, I will say, to their credit, the school team did agree once we had a robust discussion around it. But that IEP went from like 7 goals down to 2. And we couldn't find the data to support it. It wasn't that we were trying to be difficult, and they really didn't have it. So at the end of the day, they agreed, yeah, we appreciate where you're coming from, so we'll keep it in there till we have the data. And honestly, that's in my mind how a collaborative, family school discussion should go.
Yeah, absolutely. And when you talk about a collaborative family school discussion, it brings me back to what we talk about when we mention advocacy mindset. So for
Yeah.
the parents that are struggling with, oh, I'm afraid to ask that question, I don't want to, come off too strong. As you think about that collaborative discussion that you have, how does advocacy mindset play in, and what would that look like for parents?
Yeah, I think that's a really good point, because we do, when we're teaching parents, and even, others in the field, providers in the field, we talk a lot about setting emotions aside, right? And that's not to say that we don't feel emotions. I mean, I am the parent of now he's 21, but a individual who had severe dyslexia, ADHD, dyscalculia, what have you, dysgraphia. And there are some emotions, because you feel sad that your child learns differently and that they may or may not get the easy path in school. And so those emotions are real. So we have in our trainings talked about, find a space to let those emotions out, whether that is through, self-regulating your nervous system with breathing, using music, using physical exercise or outlets. Parents have to feel their feelings and process it at some stage of this game. And I shouldn't call it a game. That sounds kind of flippant. But you know what I mean? It does feel like a game when you're in it. And I was in it for so long.
Right.
So you got to feel the feelings. You've got to process them. But when it comes to working with your child's school team, leaving those emotions behind is going to allow, one, for the school team, they'll really appreciate that, first of all, because hopefully you'll be using the data, informal or formal, to speak to your concerns rather than a raised voice, an angry tone, blaming and shaming teachers or school personnel. Everybody is human first. And, nobody handles that kind of feedback well. That I know of. Anyway, it's hard to hear. So if we come in saying, you knew my child was struggling, and I'm not, saying anybody does this, but it does happen, or, shame on you, and now this is happening, that is happening. School teams, they will be empathetic. They might even slide the tissue box across the table, give you the tissues to collect yourself, and they'll sit there for a whole hour letting you vent and go on and on, but that will not have been a productive use of anyone's time. So whereas if a parent can process the mindset and everything that is going on, which is understandable, before they go into these difficult, sometimes contentious meetings it's very hard to hear where your child's deficits are. And a lot of times in the school meetings, we don't talk a lot about their strengths. My son had many strengths, extremely intelligent, very capable, but we don't focus on that as a parent, when we're in the IEP. So it's hard to hear. So I would say process, find ways to self-regulate, bring a friend, bring an expert, bring an advocate, whatever you need to help kind of ground you in that school discussion, and then let the data speak for you. And I think you'll find that is received in a way that you're able to kind of maintain a collaborative mindset throughout that process. So I hope that helps.
Yeah, I think so. And honestly, that's what you do. That's how you lead discussions as an advocate every day. So
it's true. I do all those things, actually. All the breathing and the physical exercise and the meditation, because, this work is challenging and you're dealing with real emotions. Parents are often frustrated, afraid, scared. School teams are not always feeling great about what is going to happen at the meeting. So, if you're using the data, kind of sets all those feelings and like that insecurity that can kind of be in the room aside. Like, we're just going to look at the data. We're going to have a productive discussion. We're not here to make anyone feel bad about what they're doing. Yeah.
Right.
And then we're going to let the data drive our decision making going forward, which ultimately usually leaves in a different outcome. So,
Yes.
Yep. That's great. You have a question, Melissa?
We do. We have another question, and it's multiple parts here, so you might want your pencil ready. So, how does a dyslexic kid learn spelling? And what is a realistic age to expect them to be able to spell? My child still struggles with flipping letters, yet can read at a second grade level with guidance or support.
Okay. I think I got enough to start on that one. I might have to ask her. Okay, so spelling is based on a child's ability to orthographically map the letters to the sounds. So they're visually like looking at these, and dyslexia is not a vision problem. I feel like I want to get that out there right away. But orthographic mapping means when they see the shape of this letter, they know what sound goes with it. And they're learning how to orthographically map the presentation of these letters to these sounds. She said, and it starts, the basic orthographic mapping starts with a letter. It's called phoneme grapheme development, right? So they're working with just what letter makes the sound, not just knowing it auditorily, like from phonological processing, but visually from orthographic processing. This shape of letter B, I'm drawing it on my paper, makes ba, right? The sound. Right. So, developmentally, though, it is still appropriate for a child to flip letters. I think some psychologists, and I'm not a psychologist, and neuropsychologists will tell you until about the end of second grade. And then it really should start to correct itself. So it shouldn't be happening at all in third grade, fourth grade, fifth grade, which if with severely dyslexic kids, you will see that happen for years, and it may be hard for them. There's a lot of BDPQ reversals that go on for years and years and years. So I don't know if she has any other follow-up questions, but the idea is to start with teaching the visual letters and the sounds, and then building upon that. And so once you have mastery of the letters, then you're teaching, the morphemes, and then the words, and as we said earlier, following a scope and sequence that aligns with structured literacy intervention, so that we see this coming together in a cumulative way with mastery at each stage that makes sense. So like when we were talking about the DSA earlier, letter name is that very beginning. Like, what is this letter? What sound does it make? Do you know what I mean?
Right. Yep, absolutely.
And multisensory. Again, I can't say it enough. It's got to be multisensory.
Yep. Yeah. And I think this is the parent that was talking about homeschooling and using their customized curriculum. So again, I just love you really driving home that explicit, structured, systematic way of teaching, so that way she can pull that into the way she's teaching. And there are fantastic programs out there with a scope and sequence already designed for you.
Yes. And I want to give another shout out. I do, because I don't know where this parent is located across the country, and we talk to people all over the United States, and there are often decoding dyslexia chapters in every state of this country. And if you're not connected to your area's decoding dyslexia group of parents, there's often parents, teachers, grandparents, might be neuropsychs or psychs in that community. Ask them if they know of any homeschooling groups for kids with dyslexia. I mean, it can be such a great way to trade resources, get information, just meet to alleviate some of that, like we talked about, shared mindset and challenges and celebrations with other parents. So I love decoding dyslexia for any parent that we used it here in Virginia to pass meaningful legislation for many, many years, and to provide teacher training and things like that. But it's across the country, and it's a great resource, and usually parents can find it on Facebook.
Great. Mm-hmm. All right, let's switch gears a little bit.
Yeah.
I want to talk a little bit about informal plans as opposed to IEPs.
Okay.
Specifically, they can, MTSS, RTI, sometimes they're called. Can you talk a little bit about informal plans, how they may or may not serve children, and maybe get into evaluations a little bit as well?
Okay, sure. So when you're saying informal plans, I just want to kind of, again, go back to the beginning. If a school teacher sees a child struggling in their general education classroom on any particular academic area of need, there are, different districts handle it differently. And it's either called response to intervention, MTSS, multi-tiered systems of support, but they are required to provide some type of instruction to help meet that need and close that gap that's being created that they're seeing. And this is kind of tiered levels of intervention, meaning tier 1 is a general education student with no real neurodiversity that doesn't need any kind of specially designed instruction. They're getting the content and they're they're moving right along, right? Tier 2 may need some type of specially designed instruction, may not need to be in a restrictive environment, maybe in the back of the classroom, but it's usually some kind of a leveled group where everybody's struggling to learn some skill or something. And so there's some type of specially designed instruction going on. And then tier 3 is often like the most intense needs, usually the top 5% of kids in that classroom that are not, then I said top 5%, but I want to say 5% of kids who are not getting it, right? They have the most intensive needs. They require the most specially designed instruction to close their gap. So if a parent has a child, I want to speak to it from because most school districts have to let you know, or they do let you know at a parent-teacher conference. And if you're wondering, is my child getting any kind of response to intervention or MTSS services, just ask. Send an email, ask at a parent-teacher conference, so you know. And then if you find out it's tier 2 or tier 3, that can be an indicator that maybe there's a disability or some kind of underlying processing deficit that's having an educational impact on that child. That, to your point, Melissa, may warrant a comprehensive psychoeducational evaluation. And parents do have the right, we always suggest that they put that request in writing, but if all of a sudden their child has been getting tier 3 intervention, maybe they didn't know it. So they're finding out all of a sudden that this has been going on for a year, and the gaps that were there at the beginning of the year or even 2/3 of the year are still there, and they follow up with the school team like we talked about, and there's not really sufficient progress, or the needs are still significantly away, far and wide away from what should be grade level, they should strongly consider, we would highly recommend that they request in writing for a comprehensive psychoeducational evaluation because they suspect a disability. And when we say suspect a disability, what the federal regulation talks about when parents are suspecting a learning disability, it's called SLD, specific learning disability, that's the acronym, is the imperfect ability to read, write, spell, or do math calculations that is often connected to a processing disorder and has an adverse impact on that child being able to access grade level content and make meaningful progress. And so this is the way parents always ask us, how do you end up with an IEP, or how do you end up with a 504 plan, right? And it all begins with a comprehensive psychoeducational evaluation, because nobody should be guessing as they're deciding what a child's, unique needs are, their strengths, their weaknesses. It all should be done with data, as we talked about, standardized, norm referenced evaluation data. So I don't know if that answered your question, but MTSS, I'll say one of the things that is a huge red flag for me, because we deal with this on a lot of families that start working with us, is we'll ask them as part of our, comprehensive interview, what have they been trying to do for their child? If they suspect, dyslexia or something like that, what has the school been doing? And they'll come up with these informal plans. I think you used those words at the beginning, Melissa. And these informal plans are not federally approved documents. They're not state approved documents. They're just kind of a school district created document that says child has challenges in fluency. We're going to work on fluency. Child has challenges with written expression. We're going to work on writing. But they're often not written with that SMART acronym. They're often don't include accuracy or frequency or grade level expectations. It's just kind of an effort to say, we know this is a problem. We're going to watch it and we'll let you know how they're doing. And a lot of time can go by on one of those informal MTSS plans. And so what we always advise, and I continue to recommend this to everyone, is MTSS does not have to stop while you're requesting and getting any comprehensive psychoeducational evaluation. These two things can happen in parallel. So if your school team says, we believe MTSS is going to work, you can say, well, thank you. I appreciate that you're trying to do something to help my child. And because I suspect a disability, I also am requesting here in writing a comprehensive psychoeducational evaluation. And that is because these evaluations, as we know, they have long timelines to be done. In Virginia, where we're based out of, it's 65 business days. In other states, it can be as much as 80 days to get that evaluation done. That can be a good portion of the school year. Yeah. So Anything you want to add on to that, Melissa? But I mean, MTSS, I like it for children who maybe have mild dyslexia, but those are not the population of families that we end up working with. I mean, if you have moderate to severe dyslexia, if you have family history of dyslexia, this is highly inheritable learning difference. So it's not a great idea just to hope and wait that MTSS is going to meet the needs of your child. Why not get that comprehensive psychoeducational evaluation?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, go ahead.
No, I just said, and then you'll know and you won't be guessing.
Exactly. And, I hear so often from parents, they'll say, yeah, I think my kid gets some pull-out help. And that's how it's kind of referred to, as opposed to really understanding, that it's MTSS and it's this, or called RTI, whatever it is in your particular state. But that pullout is what we're talking about, that little bit of extra help in the classroom, or maybe they go to see a reading specialist, find out more, right? That's, that's what we keep saying is like, don't be afraid to ask those questions, find out more about what that is. Because it definitely, like you're saying, doesn't mean that there is no disability and we can pursue that as well.
I just thought of something. I don't know if there's a question. I don't want to take away from anybody who might be asking a question live, but when you said pull out, it made me think of something.
Yeah, go ahead, hit it.
So, because this is another hot topic in our world. When school teams are pulling out your child, as you said, it could be for MTSS. It could be because their IEP requires that they receive specially designed instruction in a special ed setting, which is not that gen ed classroom, right? So maybe they're working on literacy skills with a couple of others, 2 or 3 kids and a teacher down the hall somewhere else. What I'm seeing as a concerning trend is some school teams are trying, in my opinion, without the data to support it, to suggest to the parent that there's a significant social and emotional harm to their child receiving that specially designed instruction in a special ed setting. And that child would be much better served if they would just leave them in the general education setting and let the teacher differentiate their instruction. And to me, this is a big red flag for kids who have, again, moderate to severe and profound dyslexia. And I want to, share it here because it does sound good to hear, hey, I think your child will be better served in the general education classroom. As a parent, I know I always felt like, oh, that's great. Maybe their needs are not, my son's needs are not that severe, right? Maybe he's able to hold his own with his same age and grade level peers. But oftentimes, again, not saying this is always, sometimes there's a staffing issue and they don't have a person who can work with your child. So they want to push them back into the gen ed setting. Or sometimes they're seeing some progress in isolation, but it's too soon, again, to put them back in the big pond, of the general education classroom. They haven't generalized these skills just because they can do some things in isolation. So I think it should be a red flag to parents when they are told, if the only reason you're being given is for social emotional concerns because kids can be difficult and they're going to have to explain why they're leaving the classroom, what I want to offer is the social and emotional impact of being left in a general education classroom that is providing instruction for students who are not neurodiverse in any way. It is tier 1 core instruction, and it's really hard to differentiate that to the point that meets a child's unique needs. And so the social emotional harm of sitting there trying to do what everyone else can do and publicly not be able to do it because that gen ed curriculum is moving faster and it's moving at a pace and a depth that would be really hard for a child who has, moderate to severe dyslexia to keep up with. That social emotional is 10 times worse than, in my opinion, than having to, explain that. Honestly, when kids are in elementary school, they're really not so attuned to who's moving, coming, going, working with this teacher or that. Often parents will, and we talk to parents about this, will have to work with their child to be able to, confidently say, well, I'm dyslexic and I'm working on my reading. And that's why I'm, here or down the hall or what have you. And there is some social emotional impact to that. I don't want to, not acknowledge that, but it's 10 times worse to be left in a gen ed classroom is what I'm trying to speak to, because I think that actually creates it I think that's harmful. And I know I've said this before, but my view on LRE, least restrictive environment, is a bit contrarian in the world, because I feel like a bright or average to bright student with dyslexia is also very socially perceptive, and they would much rather be in a classroom of other dyslexic students learning how to read, write, and spell than be left in a grade level English language arts curriculum where they're not getting what they need, and they know they're not getting what they need. And now they're shutting down, and they're having anxiety and school refusal, and now nightmares. And when they're older, they're just dropping out and they're not trying. They're turning to drugs and alcohol. I mean, these statistics are real. And I contend it's because we are so afraid as a school district to separate our kids, which rightly so. The history of No Child Left Behind is not okay. There should not be a room of children that learn differently and not, done appropriately. Yeah. But sometimes I do feel like that's what specially designed instruction is. It is differentiating the content, the delivery, the methodology, that multisensory teaching that kids require so they can close these gaps and confidently return when it's appropriate to that gen ed setting. And they don't, also add, Melissa, they don't always have to be pulled out the whole time, right? You know this, you were a teacher, you can have English language arts and have those kids who learn differently with dyslexia be there for the read aloud and the group collaboration and the Q&A and what have you. And then maybe they're leaving for a portion when you're working on spelling and high frequency words and morphology and everything else that they're maybe not ready for.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think what you're saying really, it's so important, because we look at social emotional impact, and certainly, as you said, it needs to be considered, but we also have to look at the academic impact as well. Mm-hmm. And what we heard about at the International Dyslexia Association conference is that studies are showing that the academic impact of pulling kids and giving them the specially designed instruction that they need, that meets their unique needs, is having a much better academic impact, which then of course leads to better social emotional results as well. Because, kids who can read are more confident, right?
It has nothing to do with where they're taught. It's how they're taught, right, Melissa?
Exactly.
That was the big takeaway. And I know we were just in Atlanta for the fall International Dyslexia Conference. And I think some teachers were really shocked by those statistics that were shared. Because again, we don't come to these conclusions without some good intentions. But once you have the hard data, which we are big fans of, then you can make informed decisions. And I contend kids who need to be in a specialized setting and get what they need. And they're going to start to feel their own improvement, because, we've seen it so many times, Melissa, where kids are behavior problems, or they're refusing to go to school. Well, they're refusing to go to school because they're not getting their needs met. Right. So then once we help get an IEP, and now they're getting that specially designed instruction, and they can feel the difference, that they understand the letters and the sounds, and they know how to decode, and they're starting to read that decodable text, and they're like, I can actually understand it, right?
Yeah, it's like life-changing,
It really, really is. And so then you're like, okay, I don't mind being pulled out with Mr. John, because Mr. John is teaching me how to read. You know what I mean?
Right. And, I just want to mention that on our website, we do have a blog regarding the International Dyslexia Association conference, the takeaways, the research. So if you want to see more about exactly what we're talking about, go to the blog section on our website and you can check that out there. Right. I also want to real quick answer this question. Do you know how long it takes to evaluate a child in Idaho? And I don't know off the top of my head.
I don't know off the top of my head.
But I think we could tell them where to recommend. I think we could tell them where to go to find that information.
I would say their Department of Education website. 100% start there and look for special education. Look for evaluations. I would call if the website is confusing to you. Most also in just about every state, there should be a PTI, a Parent Training Institute, that's federally funded. And you could call, if you didn't get anywhere with your Department of Education in Idaho, call your state PTI. And if you're not sure who that is, again, you could just Google this or ask. And you're really trying to, in my mind, ask what is the process. And it's probably going to be, like we talked about, request in writing, a comprehensive psychoeducational evaluation, and they should be able to tell you the timeline. But those state PTIs are great resources. They provide free advocacy information. They often do not go to advocacy or to meetings as an advocate, but they're just really do a great job of supporting parents. And
PTI is one more time.
Parent Training Information Center, I think it is. I said institute, but I think it's information. PTI, Parent Training Information. It's all designed around advocacy. Gotcha. And so there are state-funded parent training. Sometimes the reason I keep saying it is because sometimes it's called PTI and sometimes it's called something else, and the acronym's not coming to me. But definitely start with the Department of Education. And many departments of education also have an ombudsman or ombudswoman where you can call and get some helpful information from those folks that are supposed to be impartial and helping families navigate.
Great. Yeah. Excellent.
Yeah.
Well, that is all the questions that we have for tonight.
That's great.
But it was wonderful getting on here and talking with you a bit, Lorraine.
It was. It's always fun, Melissa. You know, I love this. I always enjoy just kind of talking live about what we're seeing. And whenever parents join in, it's even better with your questions because that's, really fun for us. So I hope that if there are any parents still here or the parents that we've given you information, just let us know, leave a comment. Was this helpful? What would you like for us to talk about in the future? We really do strive to serve as many families as possible. We just don't always know. So that's why I thought we'd talk about lessons from the field tonight, but we'd love any feedback anyone wants to share.
Yep, absolutely. And, if you continue to have questions specifically for your child, give us a call, reach out at our website, LorraineHightower.com. Here, I can stick it up again. And Rachel has been doing a great job of adding links as well to the comments. So she has that blog that I mentioned listed in the comments. She also has information about Idaho and a phone number to call. So you can,
awesome.
Yes, thank you so much. And so, book a discovery call. Let's chat for free and just talk about what your situation is and how we might be able to help.
Hey, Melissa, I wanted to say one other thing, if it would be helpful to families. I know you guys said you're sharing the website, but we do, and you really lead this effort as kind of our education director. We put out so much great content. We're doing trainings. I don't even know, Melissa. How do people find out? Do they have to subscribe to something to get that information?
Yes, you can definitely subscribe to our community on our website. And I bet Rachel can probably pull up a link for that as well while we're on here. But you can definitely subscribe on our website and join our community. That way you're kept up to date on everything. Unfortunately, this is just the day after registration closed for our Dyslexia Advocacy Advantage training. But we do have an IEP empowerment guide available on our website. So if you miss DAA, but you really want to feel like you're a strong advocate for your child and you understand an IEP and all the parts of it, go grab that empowerment guide. I think it's free for a limited time. So jump on that while you can. And
we're going to do DAA again, Melissa. We're going to be offering that again. So
we'll be offering it again. It's coming back around. It's coming back. But in the meantime, your IEP empowerment guide will be helpful. And check out our blogs. We cover lots of different topics. And like Lorraine said, let us know what you want to hear about. Let us know what you want to learn. I think next month we're getting into evaluations, private evaluations and advocacy. We're going to collaborate and that should be very exciting as well. So we've got ideas, but we want to know what you want to hear as well.
All right. Well, thank you. It was fun. I appreciate you posing me with all the live questions, Melissa, and hope everyone has a great evening.
All right. Bye, everyone. See ya.